We are in the dark ages of League of Legends coaching. Right now, League is being played with leather helmets and flying V formations. And it's being coached by people with no vision or not enough clout to make changes. If you are like me and you want our sport to advance, then join me in hoping that LS succeeds as C9's coach. Not because you like him or dislike him, but because you want League to grow and evolve. This video has been a long time coming. Over 2 months ago, I spent a lot of time writing a script called Why I Think LS Will Fail as the Head Coach of C9. This came right on the heels of his announcement as head coach. And then, I just sat on the script. I didn't turn it into a video because something just felt a little wrong. Let me just put it all out there. I dislike LS. I find it to be pompous, annoying, and with an unearned arrogance. I remember when he had a guy who paid him for coaching, who he basically stole money from, and only agreed to make it right because it was posted on Reddit. He demeans players all the time if they don't agree with him. Everything about him screams that he's a terribly fragile person emotionally. But here's the important thing. None of that matters. A few years back, someone asked the Arizona Cardinals general manager if he cared about players' off-the-field issues, and he came back with an absolute gem of a quote. If Hannibal Lecter ran a 40-yard dash in 4.3 seconds, we'd probably diagnose it as an eating disorder. Ellis doesn't need to be a good person, or someone you like, to want him to succeed as a head coach. That's why I didn't publish my original video about him. I knew that my personal distaste for the guy was coloring my script a little bit, and even though it takes me a lot of time to write a completed script, I want to publish something that I'm proud of. Here's something I'm very sure of, though. League of Legends coaching is stagnant. We are 10 years into this sport, and no one is pushing it forward. I believe there are several reasons why this is true. First, we have a problem that, while obvious, is still very important. There is an extreme lack of coaching infrastructure for lower-level coaching talent. If you want to coach American football, it's pretty simple. You sign up to coach a youth team. There are many of them, and they are happy to have volunteer coaches. From there, you can go to the high school level where you may be paid, sometimes quite well. And if you do well, you can make big money as a college coach, up to $10 million a year, or as a professional coach in the NFL. I recently spent a 6-month journey trying unsuccessfully to become a volunteer coach in any of my local schools' League of Legends teams, which I'll detail in full in another video. But to say it is an unorganized wasteland is an offense to actual wastelands. You can become a coach for an amateur team, or perhaps your clash team, but there's no clear framework for how to translate that into climbing the ladder. If we assume coaching talent is equally distributed, it means that thousands of people who may be extremely gifted have little to no chance of becoming a professional coach. Which leads to my next point. Pro players aren't guaranteed to be good coaches. This is Michael Jordan. Unless you're a kind of person who intentionally avoids all talk of sports ball because you're a computer gaming hipster, you've at least heard of him. He was the greatest basketball player of all time. After he retired from playing basketball, he bought the Charlotte Hornets team and started managing them, including selecting player talent. The Hornets have been one of the worst teams in the National Basketball Association for 15 years, in spite of being led by the greatest player of all time. This is Wayne Gretzky, an ice hockey player whose nickname is the Great One. He's undisputably the best hockey player of all time. As a coach, he led the Phoenix Coyotes for 4 years and managed to have a winning record in only 1 season before he stepped down. The great one on the ice was the mediocre one behind the bench. This is Diego Maradona, considered one of the greatest footballers of all time, including being one of the only players to ever score a goal playing soccer and volleyball in the same match. As a coach, he had an extremely poor record with no great success to speak of. There has never been a sport where only the people who played at the highest level have been good coaches. Some are, some aren't. At the top level in League, we are slowly moving away from only ex-players being coaches, but there still isn't good infrastructure to identify talent from outside the ex-professional level. I was watching Dignitas play EG this weekend and saw Xin Zhao building Sterix second. Why is a professional player doing this? This is the wrong item. It's become a meme that pros don't read patch notes, but here's the thing. It's a well-known meme in just about every sport that lots of pro athletes don't know much about their sport, they're just good at playing it. Building Sterix like this is 100% a coaching issue. Why is the Dignitas coaching staff letting their players build this? Have they not informed River of the changes? And this isn't a pros play differently so they build differently thing. It's just a bad choice based on old build orders. If you are a pro org with millions of dollars invested in your company, why is your coaching staff allowing the most basic of mistakes to happen? If you watch this game, you know there were a lot of issues with the way Dignitas played, but a professional coaching staff should be expected to, read patch notes and prepare their own players. When I originally wrote my script about LS 2 months ago, one of my points was that LS is basically a streamer and influencer, and so I was worried he wouldn't be all in on coaching C9. He would always have something to fall back on. But then I realized I had it all backwards in my head. Ellis being an influencer is a good thing, precisely because he has something to fall back on. A lot of these coaches right now, this is their only job. If they get fired, they might have to move to an entirely new industry. A football coach can be fired from a professional team and look to a college team or a high school one, and there are tens of thousands of jobs. Right now, League just doesn't support that. So we have coaches afraid to try anything that will possibly fail and put the eyes of ownership on them. I understand that. But some of the mistakes being made are so basic, and some of the obvious cues being missed are, well, so obvious. Hullbreaker has been an absolutely broken item in solo queue since it was buffed twice right after it was released. I made a video about how broken it was. But the real kicker is that it was obviously busted in pro play because they can play to support a split push so much better than you can in solo queue. If this item was strong for splitting in solo, then it was likely even better in pro play. So why did it take pro coaches over half a year to figure it out? The reason was because no one else was doing it, so they played it safe. They had to watch high elo Korean players to do it before they would even try it. All my deep tech videos are about finding gaps in the game's design to exploit to help you climb. League is a 10-year-old system of kludges on top of kludges. It is absolutely ripe to be exploited. Someone made a post on Reddit recently about how the dragon's auto attacks are counted as spells because of how old Pantheon's passive worked and how it let him take dragons super early. Of course, they remade Pantheon years ago. Has anyone thought to revert the dragon? No, because even with 200 years of design experience, it's still a bunch of humans designing this game. That's just one small example of systems that were kludged together to solve past problems that hasn't been updated as time went on. When objective bounties came in, players like Lorlo figured out the Janna top smite strategy. These gaps in the system exist all over the place, but pro coaches are out here drafting Renekton or Jace top, just like they used to draft Corki or Azir mid for every single game. This is where I hope that LS having a good, high-paying job to fall back on will lead him to search for these gaps. We've already seen an Ivern and a Soraka mid. We've seen a zillion Karma flex. These are the kind of things that other coaches are too afraid to run because if it fails, they are afraid of the consequences. Let's discuss why I think coaches in League are so conservative. It comes down to 4 factors. 1. No fallback. Only a few coaches in all of League command much respect. 2. Lack of reward. Riot has shown over and over again it will quickly patch to quash off-meta play. We saw it with Taric Sona, we saw it with Garen Yuumi bot, with Sona top, with Janna top, we saw it with Sion top. So if you do come up with a new idea, it may get nerfed very shortly thereafter. 3. Lack of practice. This relates somewhat to point 2. You may come up with a good strategy, but it involves getting players to practice a strategy that may not be viable next patch, which ties into our 4th point. 4. Lack of player buy-in. Let's discuss this one in more detail. Most coaches are very young. Rightly or wrongly, most people find it harder to respect a 25-year-old than a 45-year-old. If you are a viewer of my video, and you are starting your career, you may find this yourself. It doesn't matter how good your ideas are, when you are a freshly graduated guy, it's hard to get them heard by the right people. I've noticed as I've grown older that even though my ideas don't change much, people are a lot more receptive to them. This is also true for dating, but we'll talk about that in another video. League coaches are young, and by virtue of the age of the game, can't have more than 10 years of experience coaching it. Most of them have even less than that. Right now, the players have a lot of sway over what happens, and when a coach who doesn't get much respect tries to get players to try a new strategy, if it fails the very first time they practice it, that can be the end of that strategy. League is analogous to basketball. If your star player is upset at your coach, the coach is probably on the way out. This is why NBA coaches have such impressive resumes. They are coaching a bunch of 20-year-old millionaires and they need to get them to buy into their systems. If you are the owner of a League of Legends team, you need to be looking for the same thing, a coach who can get players to buy in. And this is why, for the sake of our sport, I hope LS succeeds. He has the gravitas amongst players to get them to buy into his ideas. I don't think every idea LS has is good. In fact, a lot of them are quite ungood in my opinion. But the most important thing is that they are formed based on a strong analytical grounding. If he continues to innovate, he will find the success we've seen him already start to achieve. If he falls in love with his pet ideas and he tries to force them, it's likely he will fail. This is important for any innovator, and I know I have a lot of you out there listening. If you fall in love with your ideas, you will stagnate. Eventually, every good idea is countered. In League, that can be by the meta shifting, by people adapting, or by Riot forcing a change. Which leads me to my next point. Riot can foster more innovation through lack of action. Imagine you are in charge of Riot's esports division. Your internal polling of viewers shows they don't like the same picks over and over again. You remember the groans when Azir or Corki were the only 2 mid laners that pros ever picked. You remember how boring that got. What is your solution to avoid such a thing happening? It's obvious, right? You talk to the head of the balance department and you ask them to change the meta. Riot very obviously has an unspoken policy of making changes for the sake of shifting the meta around, both in the pro scene and in regular play. But if you are the theoretical head of esports, then you should consider this effect on your scene as well. When an innovation happens and it's patched out too quickly, you are not only stopping that innovation, you are also discouraging the next one. Everyone wants to feel rewarded for their actions. The player who learns a new way to play or a new build doesn't want to feel like they wasted their time. The coach who came up with a new strategy and mapped it out doesn't want to feel like he's wasted his time. Perhaps forcing a change from the top down is attractive, and certainly if we had no one coming out with new ideas and strategies, then it makes sense. But maybe it's time to see who can adapt. Maybe it's time to let these coaching staffs flex their collective muscles and innovate. Give them a bit more time to enjoy the fruits of their labor, and you may see more fruits. Imagine a game where the meta wasn't driven by the balance team, but by the top minds of League trying to out-scheme each other. Where we could be just as heavily invested in the career of Enitron, the coach of Dignitas, as we are in LS's career. This isn't to say that Pro League won't need patches, but if they were farther apart, we could see a new era of professional League of Legends blossom. The second big thing Riot could do is to foster their lower divisions, reinvest in high school and college League of Legends. I have a friend who plays on a top college team, and their coach is a gold player who didn't make the roster. He quit, and now they just wing it.
Okay.
Got her.
I have
Got
Aura.
Lulu. This is winnable. It's winnable.
Here. Play slow.
Yo, I have Aura. Yo, Vince,
Wait, passive. Wait, passive.
I know.
King is low and back. King is low and back. Back of hit, King is low. There he is. Yep.
I'm so sorry.
Vince.
I'm tunneling. I'm tunneling.
He's being the ADC he never was. Yeah,
Let's go.
Huge.
Fostering a diverse lower league will raise the bar for all your top-end leagues too. The rewards aren't simply better coaches, but ones more willing to take risk because that's how they got promoted to the top. So LS, if you are watching this, I am rooting for you. The stakes are higher than you think. Your success may bring in a new era to our sport, where team owners look for decisive coaches who try to define the meta with their picks, and we can tune in because we are excited to see what they come up with next. Right now, we don't need another coach who will simply decide if their team is going to pick Renekton or Jace. We need someone who can build their comp around FaZe Rush Anivia in the top lane, or can figure out the secret that makes Senna the most busted ADC in the game right now. I'm hopeful that we will all see that as the League of Legends of the future, and that's why I'm rooting for you, LS. Our hopes go with you. Really quickly, if you guys like this video and want more of my content, please definitely subscribe and like the video. And if you argue with each other in the comments, then YouTube will show it to more people. I've been listening to your requests in the comments, and I've started streaming. I'll be streaming at 6 p.m. US Eastern Time the day this video releases. I'm going to be opening up 10 years of loot that I've never touched on my main account, and then we'll probably play some Lost Ark. I really love to interact with people, so if you want to come hang out, I'd really appreciate it.